Welcome to Tim and Julie Harris Superstar Interviews. We're joined today by Collette McDonald to discuss real estate coaching and the role it's played in her top producing success. Collette is the founder of Collette McDonald Associates in the Atlanta area, but her expertise is nationally recognized through her exposure on television programs such as HGTV's Designed to Sell, My First Place, and Bang for the Buck. In addition to being a real estate agent, Collette is also an active investor, deeply involved in nonprofit work, and publishes a widely distributed newsletter on current events for communities in the northern Atlanta area. In this interview, Collette discusses not only her achievements in real estate, but also the role that coaching has played in her career and how it fits into her future goals and aspirations. Now let's join our host, Tim Harris.
All right, Collette. Tim, thanks for that introduction. And Collette, let's just jump right in. Your coach, Julie, gave me a lot of extra questions to add to our normal repertoire of 10 superstar interview questions. And, as she was discussing your business yesterday with me as we were preparing for this interview, she told me you in particular had some pretty miraculous growth in really the past 18 months. And I really want to dig into that because there's a lot of agents around the country who are going to be seriously interested to learn how you did it because they're obviously wanting to reproduce your success. So the first question I have for you is, how do you prioritize your time?
My time is in blocks throughout my day. So I like to put it into blocks. As soon as I wake up, I focus on fitness first, then I focus on family, then I focus on work, and then family again, and then work. So it's kind of set up into these blocks, and I prioritize my time. Obviously, the fitness is for me, making sure that my mind is clear, my body is in shape so that I can do what I need to do throughout the day. Family, just getting them ready to go throughout their day. When I start working, first thing I do is I look at my spreadsheet and I think, what is going to maximize my day to make the most money for me and my family? And by doing that, I can focus on things that actually bring in the cash versus the time sucks. And then after work is completed, which is never completed in our business, I can focus on my family for a block of time. And then when they're down and in bed and doing their thing, I go back to work and focus on that. So my day is basically cycled through those blocks of time.
Well, so you mentioned a couple of things there, and if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. When you say you're focusing, right, there's one thing to time block, but you're actually time blocking and you're actually really drilling down on that specific, blocked out amount of time on an activity. So give us an example, because you're a hugely successful agent. You're one of the top agents in the country. I know you're one of the top agents in your state. So when you're deciding to drill down and focus, where do you prioritize? What are your main priorities in your business? You, Collette McDonald.
My main priorities in my business is obviously building the team that I currently have to create a brand in the Atlanta market of the one-stop shop for real estate. But doing that also incorporates, for me personally, is building the relationships so that when anyone is thinking about real estate in my market, my name comes up to at least get the interview. And I focus my time 100% on the listing side of it. I love listing the properties. I love meeting with clients. I love getting additional business. And then I can feed the team of buyer's agents to take on the buyers and the leads that we get from those listings. So when I started out in this business, you hear list to last, and I never really thought that was true. However, as I've gotten to be more successful in my career, I figured out, and guess what? They're all right. You really do need to list to last. I can only handle so many buyers, and I can handle a team that can take on as many buyer leads as I can absolutely generate, but the listings are my bread and butter. So when I get up in the morning and I'm sitting at my desk focusing on that block of time for work, I'm opening up that spreadsheet and looking at what is going to bring us the most money today and what can we get into contract today on that spreadsheet. And 75% of that's going to be listings, 25% of that's going to be buyers, and the buyer's agents are handling that.
So really, what I'm hearing you say, and I love that you really were so focused on this when you were giving your answer, was listings. Listings are where your focus is. And Collette, I have to say, I am stunned and amazed on a daily basis how it's still a revelation to agents that you have to be a listing agent if you actually want to stay in this industry. Some agents still believe that being a buyer's agent is a viable long-term business strategy, and I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. So I congratulate you for figuring that out, but more so, I congratulate you for becoming such an amazing listing agent. You know, you've increased obviously your inventory, but you've also increased your average sale price in just the past, I think, 18 months, 24 months. So let's talk about. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, since working with my coach has helped me immensely get to this point. I'll tell you that, and I'm meshing in a couple of questions here, but I will tell you, when I started in this business, I've been successful. 12 years, been doing this business. 10 years is the mark where I actually hired my business coach, my board of directors, which is obviously Tim and Julie are on my board of directors. When I did that, I went from my best year at making $13 million to this year I will go over $20 million in sales. And I attribute that to really focusing my mindset on the actual number of what I was bringing in and the time I was associating with each one of those transactions. It's just as easy to sell a $700,000 home as it is to sell a $200,000 home. And being a listing agent and being able to farm out my leads to my buyer's agents has allowed me not only to do more business on the listing side, but actually make more money by giving the leads to a buyer's agent to focus on getting those buyers in the car and closing that deal. And a lot of times I have double dipped on more properties in the last 2 years than I did in my first 10 years of business. And by double dip just means selling my own listings, being it myself or through one of my buyer's agents, which has been so cool and amazing for my business.
Right, absolutely. I mean, and again, the focus is on being a listing agent, and the thing about being a listing agent is you really do control your time, which gets back to the fact that you have a very disciplined schedule. Have you always, by the way, I know someone's asking this question out there, you're touching on all the things that agents like to avoid the most, which I really love, Collette. You didn't waste any time. You're talking about learning to be a listing agent, having the discipline of having a schedule, focusing all your best energies every day on going after listings and following up on listing leads. And we're going to talk about lead follow-up in a second. It's actually a question that your coach asked me to add to our repertoire today. So, I mean, that's really the main focus of any top producing agent. A lot of people get confused, as you know, because they start chasing down, I'm sure you see agents in your office who are chasing down these buyer leads and they're buying buyer leads. I mean, I'm curious. You didn't know this question was coming, but the idea of buying a buyer lead, how does that resonate with you?
There's no way I would do that. We create enough on our own. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, I mean, that's I don't understand that personally, but that's a different soapbox altogether. Mm-hmm. So if you could only do one marketing thing, one lead generation thing, one specific thing, which obviously we don't suggest, but if you could only do one lead generation thing, what would it be?
You know, that was a tough question. I've had to think about this in detail because my marketing is such a wheel. I have so many different spokes of my wheel, and so I had to look at what has generated the most business consistently over the last few years, and it has to have been my community involvement, getting out in front of people and actually talking about real estate in every shape and form of everything that I do. I am out there constantly doing my fitness club in the morning where I give away basically 45 minutes of intense boot camp style fitness instruction where I have been known to take 35 people and do push-ups in front of one of my listings in the neighborhood and just tell them that they need to find me a buyer, otherwise we're coming back tomorrow to do more push-ups. To being on the community involvement of the Board of Zoning Appeals or the Planning Commission for our county, that's easy for me. To be out in front of people is easy for me, and it generates a ton of business for me. But that question was really hard for me because that's what I love to do, and I'm lucky enough that it generates a lot of leads for me. The one thing that came in second, honestly, for my lead generation was my 800 number. When I looked at how much activity I get off of my signs, because I'm out there constantly, because I'm the top listing agent in my sphere or my neighborhoods, the 800 number actually, you guys would say this all the time on calls before I actually, drank the Kool-Aid. You'd be like, oh, this 800 number is going to change your life.
Wait, hold on. We have Kool-Aid? I wasn't offered any. But go ahead,
I
sorry.
would listen to it. I love it. I'm a believer in it. But I would, I questioned it. As soon as I got that 800 number on my sign writers and really learned how to manipulate that system, I get 10 calls a weekend, and 75% of those are solid buyer leads, and they're also solid listing leads because they're people in the neighborhood calling and asking about the price of the property, and and at some point they're going to want to sell, and they remember that they spoke to us and we were consistent in our message, but we were also very timely. So it's being out in the public and using your personality, obviously, and getting involved in the community, but also that second was my 800 number. So I gave you two answers.
Well, no, it's great, too, because you're actually giving complete answers, which I appreciate. So 800homehotline.com is what Collette is talking about, guys, so you should just check that out, 800homehotline.com. And what's amazing about that service is that it's only $35 a month, right? You never pay anything more than that for an unlimited number of listings. And it's so, nowadays, it would be seen as such a low-tech thing. It's just using telephony, It's not fancy, nothing high-tech about it. It has nothing to do with the Internet, really. And
right.
if you have one listing and you follow that system correctly, depending on where the listing is, but depending on where the address of where the property is, you could generate literally dozens and dozens of listing leads. So daily schedule, daily minimum standards, we talked about all those things. Your community involvement, we talked about that. And I did look at your resume, which everyone, you should be definitely checking that out. She is very involved in the community. She is really looking for opportunities to give back to her community and position herself in her market as the go-to expert, not just on home values, of course, but really on everything. I saw you were on zoning commissions and you've been holding different offices. How did you get started with all of that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of agents out there that would like to have that level of really influence in the marketplace. How did you get started?
Well, you got to start out as a grunt. And when I first started in this business, I can still remember going to a top producer seminar at our local board and sitting on the board on this panel were some agents that I didn't really respect, and there were agents I really did respect. And one of the pieces of information I got from the best agent on that board was that she basically got involved at her kids' school and slung hash or whatever in the concession stand at games, and that was one way that she got involved in the community. When I heard her say that, and by the way, she now has her own brokerage firm here and is the one that sells the $100 million estates in Atlanta. She is the top luxury agent here in Atlanta. So I took a little bit of piece from her and I applied it to my own business, and I started being the grunt just like her. I would go out and figure out what organization needed assistance, and I was lucky enough that in my neighborhood we had association for some of these neighborhoods that really wasn't an association because our neighborhoods are a little bit older than most, and so they didn't have planned communities back then, so they were trying to create these neighborhood associations. So I got involved in that. I started doing work, and I volunteered to be on their communications committee because the person who has the ability to grab email addresses is the person with the power. So I actually decided to be on the communications committee, and from that was 8 years ago, and I have now on my email distribution 2,000 neighborhood emails, and they cycle in and they cycle out, but people add to it and they come on to that list. But that all started with just volunteering my time to be that communications person for a neighborhood group. And then from there I got more involved, and I'm a political animal. I believe in certain things, and so in my little slice of Atlanta, I started to get tapped in on the county level to get involved in certain things, and our district commissioner, which is kind of like a city councilman in other cities, tapped into me and said, would you be my representative on the zoning board? And
wow.
It was something that was outside my comfort zone, to be quite honest. I've been in corporate America for a long time. I can speak in front of people, but being on a part of a quasi-legal or judicial board for a huge metropolitan area was kind of, scary. But I said, sure, what the heck, I'm going to try this. And I'm so glad I did. I sat on that board, and then from there they asked me to be on part of the planning commission. And I did all of these things knowing that getting Collette McDonald, that name, out in the community was just excellent exposure for the brand and for the expertise in real estate. I mean, I could talk to builders about zoning. I could talk to builders about how communities in this area were being developed and planned, and then it would trickle down to my clients when they came into Atlanta and asked me where the best place to buy was. I could actually talk to them about the studies that the Atlanta Regional Commission had just published, about what transportation was going to look like, what was really affecting our community over the next 30 years, because I was exposed to that by volunteering and giving back my time at that level. So whenever people ask me, what should I do to get started and build my book, get out and volunteer. What are you interested in, first of all? I mean, what makes you happy? I like to be thought of as an expert. I like to be sitting on a board in front of 300 people. Don't necessarily like it when neighborhoods come in and start yelling at me when I'm on the board, but, you got to take a little bit of that when you're in such a heavily exposed position. But overall, for my resume, you can look at, I'm not just a real estate agent. I've got all these credentials, and I give back at a high level. You can trust me as your real estate advisor that I'm going to steer you right because I'm in the know.
And we haven't even talked about the fact that you're an HGTV star. That's totally completely a different. While you were just talking, the question that pops into my mind is there a different Collette McDonald? Is there a public-facing Collette McDonald and there's a private Collette McDonald? Or are you do you feel like you have to put on an act at all? I think your answer is obviously no, but I'm just asking this question because there's people out there who would be thinking, oh, I can't do all that she does. I'm just not that much of an extrovert. I'm more of a, one-on-one type person. And so, right. Did you have to kind of change your approach to how you maybe positioned the Collette McDonald brand to have a wider audience?
I think to be successful in this business, you have to be somewhat of a chameleon, okay? You have to be able to go in and out of different situations and adapt. I will say I have always had high energy, so I can go out and turn it on when I need to turn it on to a higher level. But to be quite honest, when I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I go out to work out with my buddies at 5:30 and I'm leading 35 people in a workout, that's the same Collette McDonald that puts her head on the pillow at 10 o'clock that night. So I've got a really high energy level, but that doesn't mean that someone that doesn't have my personality can't succeed because there's so many different things to get involved with. And you don't have to be, like I said, when I first started in this business and I was on that top producer panel and watching that top producer, she was an introvert. She was in the concession stand behind the scenes listening to what everyone was talking about regarding high-priced property in very exclusive parts of Atlanta. And she used that information to catapult her to be one of the most successful agents as well. But she's not out there on boards. She's not out there on HGTV. She's using her knowledge in a different way. So, yeah, I have a lot of personality. I've got a lot of energy, and this is who I am. Unfortunately, my kids drive them crazy, and I embarrass them when I go to school and see them at school. But that's just who I am.
So I appreciate that. And I love how you answered that question, too, because it is so true. There isn't just one way to be successful in the real estate industry. There might be one way to be successful in other industries, but not here. You really can adapt your own personal, really, lifestyle around this business. It doesn't necessarily have to be the other way around. So I'm going to ask you a tough coaching question. You ready for it? What does the word urgency mean to you?
Oh, I love that word. I have that so ingrained in my psyche now. Urgency equals abundance. Abundance. When you are urgent and you respond and you actually answer your phone, and when someone asks you about selling their property, you have got 3 times for them, and most of those times are in that day. You make it your priority to get your butt out there because that first person who sits down and speaks with that seller is 90% of the time going to get that listing. In my case, 99% of the time.
But you know what? That's true. But call it. That's a really good point. And that really good point. Every study that's ever been done has shown that the first agent that a buyer or a seller comes in contact with almost always is the one that they end up doing business with. And the last bit of research I read said it was literally 88% of the time the first agent they contacted with was the agent that ended up basically getting paid. I think that's very, very true.
And, and again, back to 2 years ago, if someone would have called me and said, hey, Collette, we want to list our house, I'd been like milquetoast and said, okay, when are you free? No, not anymore. I have totally changed my mindset on that, and I look at my schedule and I will move. I will have someone pick my kids up from school if I can. If I have to get into a listing appointment that day, I'll do it. It's that important, and I have seen such huge results from changing my business perspective to meet that. It really does meet that abundancy, because you get that listing or you get that contract written or you meet that buyer, you get them under contract, and then you're free to take the next one. They're not sitting out there in limbo land. You've already got them under contract. You've already got that listing. You've got it all set up so that it frees you up for the next deal. And I think that's one of the best things that I've incorporated over the last 2 years. I actually have, besides the whiteboard wall that I now have on my wall that's right in front of my face, I have painted an entire wall in my office, and it's whiteboard paint, and at the top of it is where I'm at on my numbers, where we've hit for the year, and then what our goal is, and under that is a big urgency equals abundancy sign. Because
that's beautiful.
It's every day. That's what we look at.
So let's drill down on this urgency word, because that hasn't always been your way, from what your coach told me.
It hasn't. That's what I'm saying.
So urgency with phone calls, with voicemails. Tell me, like, when a voicemail comes in, and obviously you're not receiving all these voicemails, hopefully, and you're having your staff trained to get on the voice return calls and the emails and whatnot. So what does urgency mean? Attach a time frame to how long it takes for someone to come in contact with you to list a house or whatnot, and then to hear back from you.
Okay.
Your office
I'm going to give
is
you a couple of answers on that. I'll give you one answer on the 800 number. The 800 number, when we talk about urgency, one of the things that we have incorporated is that person has to be called back within the first 5 minutes. When they call in on that 800 number, and another reason why I love 1-800-HOME hotline is because we get the cell phone texted to us of the person who's just contacted our sign. So what we do, and honestly, 2.5 years ago, I was not good at this. I would not necessarily call a client back this quickly, and I would feel like I was being too salesy when I would do this, but my mindset has changed, and I've seen such a great outcome from this one tact that it's helped me be more urgent in calling people back and being a little bit more forceful and aggressive with these clients. But if someone calls that 800 number, we're calling them back within 5 minutes. And our first question or our statement is, hey, you contacted our 800 number on XYZ property. Thank you so much for calling. We're just calling as a courtesy to confirm you got all the information that you needed off that 800 number. And it makes them step back and go, okay, she's not trying to sell me or get in an appointment. She's just asking me a question. And
it's the as a courtesy, right?
Converter.
And it's the word as a courtesy is really, because everyone, half the agents listening right now are thinking, oh my gosh, Colette's telling me that she has this 800 number on all of her listings where people can call 24 hours a day, get the information on the houses, and then she IDs them and she calls them right back. I couldn't possibly do that. They don't understand
as a courtesy.
As a courtesy, that's right.
As
a total
courtesy.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, when my coach gave me those 2 little words, or 3 little words, as a courtesy, it changed it. It made me feel more comfortable with it. It made me go, oh my God, I can call these people back, because it is as a courtesy. I'm being nice, and I'm collecting this information, and I'm figuring this out. And so urgency on the 800 number is different than when someone else calls us back. And I would sit on calls with y'all 3 years ago before I was a real coaching client, and I would hear you guys say, just pick up your phone. Pick up your phone, people. Answer your phone. And you'll be sitting there, and you'll be doing something on your computer, and a call will come through, and you won't, recognize the number, and you don't want to answer the call. But hell yeah, you got to answer that call. And you have to have the mindset that call, whoever that is, it could be someone trying to sell you something. It could be someone you don't want to deal with, but you've got to answer that phone call and deal with it right then and there. even if it's a bad situation, you got to deal with it. But more times than not, it's someone asking you some advice about real estate. So you got to pick up that phone. If you don't have the time and you're in a meeting and you can't get back to somebody right away, another thing we've incorporated is Google Voice. Google Voice is a great option because it actually transcribes the voicemail for you. So if you're in a meeting or you're showing property and you see that someone has called and it's something that you can deal with later, or it's a true buyer or seller, you can pick up that phone. You can step outside of that buyer appointment and just say, give me a couple of minutes, and call somebody back and tell them you'll call them back in the next 30 minutes. And that, again, has created so much business for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. So what I'm hearing so far is that community involvement, doing what you're comfortable doing, making a conscious contribution to your community, right, and being urgent with your lead follow-up, being basically a great communicator, those are really the sharpest tools in your toolbox in terms of what has really caused you to go to the level of success that you have now. I mean, you're going to sell more than $20 million to real estate this year. And by the way, how much of an improvement over, say, 24 months ago is that?
That is a 45% improvement.
Yeah, that's pretty huge. I mean, yeah. I don't know of any businesses that have that kind of level of growth in that short period of time. So, yeah,
exactly.
I hope everyone's paying attention and not listening passively. You know, I hope everyone's really drilling down on these points, because you're doing such a brilliant job of explaining essentially how really critical these seemingly easy to take for granted points are. So Let me ask a question. A coach, tell me about what having a coach has done for your business.
Well, I think that mindset for me in particular has been fantastic, because I am a very confident, have high energy. I think I know exactly what I'm doing, right? And I have that personality. But when I sit there and speak to my coach, who, again, she is on my board of directors. This is my small business, right? I am only as good as the leader that is leading it. And I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not perfect. And that's what my coach does for me. She keeps me accountable. She tells me when I need to be focusing on it. She guides me, let me put it that way. She sometimes gets bossy and tells me things, but I love it. But she's my board of directors. She's the one who's constantly saying, okay, but how's that going to make us money? What's our goal this week? What are we doing this week to do this? How many listings do we have? What are we doing here to address this? She is the one that helps me focus on what truly is important, because in this business you can get sidetracked quite a bit with other things that don't make you money. The other thing, the piece of information that has helped me immensely, when Julie sat down with me, I think it was the first couple of weeks, and I was struggling a little bit with my team aspect of, vendors that I was using, and she planted one nugget for me, which was, it has turned out to be extremely beneficial to my brand as well as to my growth of my business. I was having a little stress about, who do I choose? Who do I send my buyers to for lenders? Who do I choose for construction? I have clients that need this and this and this, and I feel like I have to give 5 different names for a stager and 2 different names for a handyman and 3 different names for a lender. And when she said, look, Collette, she said, these people are part of your team. They're part of your business. They're part of Collette McDonald Associates. Choose one. Make sure they understand what that one choice means to them, because you're going to be sending all of your business to them. Obviously, with RESPA and different things in the real estate world, we have to be very careful in this matter, but make sure you vet out folks that are going to be receiving referrals from you and make them part of your team. Get them to buy into Collette McDonald Associates. And I did that. And one of the best examples, well, I've got a couple examples, but my handyman or my lender or my stager, if I'm sitting in a listing appointment and somebody needs something fixed, or somebody needs to be qualified for the next deal, or somebody needs to have the house staged immediately, like in 24 hours, I know I can call one of those people because they understand their placement within my business, and they will drop everything to deal with what I need to have them deal with, because they know urgency with me is urgency for them, and it creates abundance in their business. And I've actually had my lender introduce me at events and say, this girl's my top agent. She is the top 5% in Atlanta, and this is what she changed about her business, and I'm lucky enough to be on her team. If you're lucky enough to find an agent who gets it, you'll have the same success that she has as well as me.
And they become great referral sources too, right? I mean, they become part of your really, maybe even the best sources of business over the long term. So you said something there, and I've heard it repeatedly throughout this whole interview, and I'm glad you're saying it because it really is the bottom line. You obviously are a business person. You're running a very successful, growing business. You're adding staff members. You're figuring out how to do things better at a higher level. Having a coach, having Julie as your coach, can you actually say for sure that having Julie as your coach has made you money?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yes, I can. Julie's made me money by making me a smarter business person, a smarter realtor, and just planning for the future. I mean, she is laser focused in what I need to happen to make the absolute most money that I possibly can. You know, in talking about business, you go outside and you talk to people who are in, sales with pharmaceuticals, different types of industries, and they'll ask, what are your goals? What are your goals for next year? And I'll look people straight in the eye and I'll say 20% increase in growth. That's my goal. And I've had people just laugh at me and go, a 20% increase? And I'm like, yeah, that's totally doable in my business. And I'm like, right. I'm like, no, it really is. Look at what I've done over the last couple of years. A 20% growth is doable. And how do I get there? By having accountability, having my mindset in laser focus. And the only way that, for me, it works for me, is to have that call every week with my coach, Julie, my business director, Julie, telling me, helping me focus on what needs to happen that week. So I'm a big believer in having a coach and having that person that you can turn to. But I also want to let agents know out there that it doesn't just help you. When you are dealing with a co-op agent, after a few years of being coached yourself, you'll start to see that you're starting to coach other agents. When you have a deal falling apart and the other agent's just like, oh, my God, this is going to die. It's going to die. I'll give you a great example. I had a client or a seller literally 6 weeks ago. We got their house under contract, $10,000 above list, 4 offers. The buyer is 8 months pregnant, can't wait to move in. Her house is sold. She is so excited to be buying this house. Doesn't even make the house contingent upon the sale of her house, but it's still in due diligence. The last 2 days of due diligence, the sale of her property that she was selling falls apart. Her agent calls me crying and going, Collette, I don't know what to do. This deal is falling apart. The seller, the buyer on her house is not going to be able to close and is freaking out about inspection, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, calm down. I said, it's not a big deal. We can figure this out. So, and the old Collette would be like, well, son of a gun, and how could you do this? And I would have probably got a little bit of anger in there. But instead, I harnessed my inner Julie, and I said, how long did it take you to sell that house the first time? She said 2 days. I said, okay, how about this? Instead of canceling and terminating this deal, let's extend it for a couple of days, this due diligence. I can convince my seller to extend it for a few days. We're through inspection. We know what needs to be worked on and fixed. How about you guys reduce the price of your house to where your contract was, and let's give it a week. Let's just give it 1 week and see if you sell it again. She said, oh, my God, would you do that for us? I said, absolutely. Meanwhile, I got Julie in my head saying, you know what, you've got this under contract, you've already gone through inspection, you don't want to sell it again, 1 week's not going to kill you, blah, 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 because I've been with Julie for so long, I know what she's going to tell me. And so the agent goes off, and she goes ahead and reduces the sales price, has an open house, comes to the last day of that 7-day, she sells it. She sells it again. She sells it to the original buyer who had gotten cold feet during that due diligence, sells it again to him, and we close on our deal. And everybody's happy. My clients are happy. The lady who's going to have the baby, there are no other houses on the market, is moving in. Everybody's happy. So when I look at what Julie's done,
that's a great example. Right.
Yeah, you learn to coach other agents to save your deal, because it's all about making your clients happy, obviously, but what's going to make them happy? Keeping that deal together no matter what.
That's absolutely true. So the next question I wrote down, I think, is really kind of an interesting question because how different people answer this. Life balance. Is that sort of just something that every agent should be trying to accomplish in their lives? Is it an admirable goal, or is it really a myth?
Depends on what your definition of balance is.
Ah.
So my definition of balance is completely different than anyone else's definition because I have a lot of energy. I'm high energy. Balance to me, because I was in the corporate world, is the fact that I am here in my community. I get to work in my community. If my kids are sick and they need me to come get them from school, guess what? I'm not on a plane. I'm not in another city. So balance to me is totally different. I grew up in real estate. I grew up working at apartments and cleaning them out on the weekends when I was a kid. My parents were investors. So working 7 days a week to me is not abnormal. You know, Saturday and Sunday is just another day in the week. Being able to go and have lunch with a friend or go work out at 5 o'clock in the morning or go to a tennis match or do something for my children during the week, that's balance. That, to me, makes me happy. So, yes, I think that there is balance, but you have to step outside of the box and you have to make that definition for yourself. My definition, when I get a text message from somebody on a Friday going, TGIF, I'm like, really? I'm in real estate. It's really not that exciting. That means it's charging my work.
But you're touching on something again. That's another one of those, I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or not. You're just being yourself. But you're touching on a huge taboo in real estate. It's something that's come up in the past really decade where people feel like, oh my gosh, you know, to be successful, like, you know, but I want to be successful in real estate, but I'm only willing to give my business a certain amount of time per week. And the reality of it is that to be successful in anything at your level, you have there is no, I mean, you can obviously take days off, and you should. You have to schedule it, but you really are working when you're a successful business owner 24/7. There just isn't any way about it. I mean, you might be on an appointment or out with your friends, but the antivirus software that is being a business owner is constantly running in the background. Have you always? Does that analogy kind of resonate with you?
Absolutely. If you want to make the money that you can make in this business, it's not a 9-to-5 job. You've got flexibility, and you create your lifestyle around it, but it is 7 days a week. And if I have somebody interview with me that, you know, only specifically wants to work hours, great. Come on as an assistant. You can come on as an assistant, or you can be a referral agent, but it's 7 days a week because we work when our clients aren't, but we also work when our clients are because we still have to work with attorneys and all the other people who are going to make sure that deal actually happens. So it is a 7-day work week, but one day it might be 2 hours, one day it might be 20 hours. You just never know. You have to be flexible. But again, my definition of success is making $750,000 a year. If you only want to make $30,000 a year, then great. That's fine. You can do it. You can work a couple hours a week, whatever. But if you really want to be successful, you've got to make that definition of what you want to make per year, when you want to retire, what you want to do with your life. And I'm young. I'm in great health. And Julie and I joke all the time that she wants me to put on my wall a little old lady in a walker selling real estate on my wall, so that when I look at it and go, I'm just tired, I don't want to call this person back, I look up at that old lady with the walker and I remember, I don't want to be doing this forever. This is something that is great, and we can make a lot of money and we can do great things for our clients, but we have to be willing to put the time and the effort in it. Just like working out. You're not going to get a six-pack ab if you only do a plank every once in a while. You've got to be able to put the time and the effort into it.
And don't be conflicted about that. I mean, if you have big goals, it's going to take a lot of work. Don't be conflicted about it. If you want to just make a little bit of money, you send me all your referrals. That's fine. And you'll pay them a referral fee. That's right.
I'll pay you 20% all day long. Exactly.
No worries. All right. Exactly. Looking back at the start of your real estate career, when you were a new agent, what would you have spent more time on, and what would you have not done at all in retrospect? Where maybe, if you're being honest, you can say that wasn't the best use of your time?
When I started in this business, I really thought that I was coming from corporate America, and I thought I needed more credibility in my background in real estate than what I had. So I went to a full-service company, and I totally bought into the relocation clientele. And I didn't have any leads, so I thought, well, they're going to feed me all these leads, and I'm going to pay them a buttload. I mean, I think I walked out of each deal maybe making 30% of the final number. But, I thought, I'm going to create this great database of clients, which it did. Don't get me wrong, it did. But your question is very specific. What would I have done differently knowing what I know now? I wouldn't have put the time and the effort and the money, because if you think about it, I was spending money because I wasn't making that money. I was getting those referrals from the relocation companies. And it was a time suck, and it was buyer-focused, and it was expensive. If I would have just taken that money and gone into more training and coaching, I don't want to make this sound like a commercial, but it really, if I would have taken that money and put it into coaching at an earlier time in my career, I would have been making a hell of a lot more money than I was. And don't get me wrong, I was Rookie of the Year. I was making six figures my second year. I've been very successful, but my definition of success might be different than somebody else's definition of success. So if I would have focused a little bit more on understanding the sales side and really focusing my mindset and really figuring out what I wanted out of this business and doing that with a coach, I would have been more successful. And some people think they're going to go into a brokerage house and their broker is going to be that person for them. My philosophy on that is my dad was a broker. My dad's responsibility basically was babysitting a bunch of real estate agents because there's a lot of mediocrity out there in the real estate world. And that's what the broker's responsibility was, to bring everybody up. Even a blind pig can find a truffle every once in a while. So they're going to hire on every single agent out there that they possibly can. And their responsibility is to babysit and make sure they don't get in trouble. And it's not necessarily making sure I'm a success. Me, Collette McDonald, is a success. And I think that was a misnomer in my mind that was what the broker's responsibility was. So I would have focused much more on my development early on and becoming more of a sales maniac, more on the listing side early on. I mean, I've been doing this.
You just said something, and I want to jump in because this is something, again, that in our real estate industry people are also conflicted about, and you clearly are not. Collette, are you a salesperson?
I am.
Right. I mean, what's with all these people out there that are telling agents not to think of themselves as salespeople? I promise you, Collette, as I asked that question and as you answered it without even thinking about it, I promise you there's people out there that are right now ending the recording because they do not and cannot think of themselves as salespeople, like somehow that's a bad word.
And it's so funny that you say that because I can still remember my first consultation with Julie Harris. And we were on the phone, and now that I know Julie, I'm sure she was rolling her eyes at this first conversation, but I said the same thing. I said the exact same thing. I said, I don't want to, and this is going to age myself, but if you ever watched WKRP in Cincinnati, there was that sales guy, Herb Tarlett, who always wore his white belt, and he was such a used car salesman. And in my mindset, I was like, I am not a salesperson because that is what I think of when I think of a salesperson. And it was almost like deprogramming. Julie had to deprogram me for a little bit, and she had to go, you know what? What's wrong with that? Why do you have such an issue with that? Because this is what this is going to do for you. These are the goals you're going to make. You're helping people. You are actually serving a need. People need this in their lives. You are helping them. And when she brought that into perspective over and over in my mind, I have no problem. And when I talk to my son, who's 12 years old, and he's an amazing little kid, I will look him in the eye right now and I'll say, I want you to be in sales. You're an amazing salesperson. You can do this, and this will give you freedom. And he's like, what?
The highest paid people in the world are salespeople. There is no exception to that.
I don't want you to be a doctor. I don't want you to be a doctor. I don't want you to be a lawyer. I want you to be a salesperson. You figure out what you want to sell, you be a salesperson.
Well, I would suggest, Collette, that even a good doctor, a really successful doctor, is also a great salesperson because he has to talk people into procedures, doesn't he?
Well, plastic surgery, I'm sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I mean, so really, one of the core elements is that mindset that I'm a salesperson. And then, as Collette said, there's so much stigma with that word. really, at the end of the day, you are in the business, in the real estate industry, to help people, to be of service to others. And if you have that being your prominent thought every single moment, then of course you're going to naturally do a better job, because you know that ultimately, yes, you're selling something, but you're also helping these people accomplish what in many cases is one of the biggest really accomplishments in their lifetime. Speaking of accomplishments, Collette, what was your single biggest success? And you've had so many, it's a hard question for you to answer, but what's your single biggest success so far in your real estate career?
Financial freedom. That's my biggest success, financial freedom, not having to worry about making a payment, being able to feel comfortable that my knowledge and my experience and my brand and my background is enough of an annuity if I keep pushing forward, that I'll be able to pay my bills, be able to take care of my family, and have that freedom. That is the biggest success. I mean, I could tell you it's getting the Atlanta Falcons gig where I'm the realtor for the Atlanta Falcons. I could say it's being on HGTV. I could tell you a lot of different things, but when you roll it all up into one little bundle, it's financial freedom.
But you're talking about financial freedom in two different ways. You're talking about financial freedom because you have a lot of, as we call it, steaks in the freezer. But what I really get the sense of, you're talking about financial freedom that comes from the confidence that you will always be successful because you now know how. Am I reading you correctly here?
That's why I call it an annuity. It's going to continue to reap dividends and payments to me, because now I know that I can turn around and I can sell you a house. I can help you buy a house. I am the expert in my area. I am your trusted real estate advisor, and I know that I do it better than anybody else in my area.
What are the biggest misconceptions people have about top producers? You've come a long way, obviously, and you remember probably back when you weren't the level of success you had now. How have you seen people's attitudes maybe towards you change, or in general, what are the misconceptions that our industry has about someone that's producing at your level consistently?
I think the biggest misconception actually comes back to one of our conversations we had earlier, which is the time that it takes, the involvement that it takes. I think people think that once you're at a top producing level, that all you're doing is selling, $5 million homes, and you only have to do one of those a year, and blah, blah, blah. And it really is completely opposite. And I know that's as a fact for a lot of the top producing agents that are friends of mine. We are constantly working. We are lead generating. We are out there in the community. We are making real estate our focus. And it can be fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a very social person. And one of the other things that Julie and I do a lot during the holidays, she says, I want to make sure that you're out there and you don't turn down any invitation to any party that you are invited to. And heck, yeah, that's really great for business because everybody wants to talk about real estate. So she makes me go out and party all the time too, with respect, because she won't let me have more than 2 glasses of wine, but whatever. She sounds like such a babysitter, doesn't she? But I love her.
She remember, I've been married to her for more than 20 years. Believe me, she is.
Hey, but if she can make me a success, that's probably why you're such a success, Tim.
Yeah, probably.
But I think that's the biggest misconception, is that we all can go out and drive our Lexuses and take long weekends and we're gone for 2 weeks out of the year vacationing in the Alps and doing all that. No, I mean, top producing agents, we're still working. Our philosophy, or my philosophy, just is, what's the timeline that I have to do this for? I actually do want to retire someday. I actually do want to enjoy my retirement. And not a lot of people can even do that anymore. And so having that plan and having that mindset as a top producer, you're going to work your butt off, but in the end it's going to pay off, because you're going to be able to retire where all these other people who are still selling real estate in their 80s and 70s, they're having to turn a couple tricks a year to make sure that they can feed themselves. We're not going to be like that.
Collette, I assume when you're saying retirement, you're not thinking in terms of the traditional stick your feet up on the porch and rocking back and forth drinking your lemonade.
I'm thinking of being on the board of directors of someone else's company.
Yeah, exactly. So when you mean retirement, you basically being retired from having to earn money, because at that point your money is earning for you, right?
Exactly. And
guys, that's a really important thing, and I'm just clarifying that because she's kind of inferred that throughout this whole call. But the definition of rich, the definition of wealth, is very simple. And again, to Colette's really great point, it's wonderful she said this. It's different for everyone, but really the bottom line is it's when your money's working for you and you no longer have to work for your money. In order to get to that point, you have to create passive income. To create the passive income, that comes from, guess what, real estate transactions. I don't know anyone who's quote-unquote rich just from selling real estate. They're rich from the money that they made from selling real estate and investing in other things. So that's really what I think Collette is expressing to all of you, and hopefully you guys are picking up on that. So, Collette, here's a fun question. I mean, and actually, I'm going to add a bonus question on here because your coach asked me to. So this was the last question I'm going to ask after this one. I think you'll really enjoy. So, why you, and perhaps the most competitive real estate market in the world, and I know Atlanta has been just on fire lately. It's really a powerful seller's market right now, and most of it, especially where you sell. Why have you succeeded consistently at such a high level? We've talked about it throughout the call, but with that one question, what's the first thought that comes to your mind?
I never took my foot off the pedal. I consistently, for the last 12 years, have been working very, very hard at it. But when everyone else got maybe discouraged or got out of the business when things were tough, no way. We just put we put more effort into it. We stayed in front of it. We stayed in front of the clients. We made sure that the people in our area knew that we were their trusted real estate advisors. We are the ones that they can turn to get honest feedback and advice and actually help with the recovery of the market in our little area. So I think that is probably the biggest thing right there. We just never stopped. We did not take a break. I will tell you, the only time that I actually take a real break is the 1 week between Christmas and New Year's, because it seems like every year over and year over, that's the one time that I can take a little bit of a breath. But right now, a lot of agents are sitting down and saying, okay, it's fourth quarter. I'm not really going to be focusing on anything. Hell no. I'm focusing on how I can get listings and fill my pipeline so that January and February are rocking months and that I don't have that little valley. I have to be consistent the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you just said, too, because it's so critical. As far as you building business for the next year, that really starts in third, fourth quarter of the previous year. That's like a little top producer secret that no one ever tells you. You have to kind of learn that either from a coach or by observing top producers. And this is also the best time of year to go after business because there's the least amount of competition, because as soon as Halloween rolls up, most agents are basically hanging their licenses up, till the spring. And the sellers that are out there are the most motivated, and the buyers who are still looking are the most motivated. So everyone who's listening right now, there's no question that fourth quarter is the best and oftentimes the easiest time, despite the holidays, to build your inventory. Work now, and it pays enormous dividends in the spring because you start the year with momentum opposed to having to build your business back. All right, so now here's the fun question. This is just for you. I've never asked this on an interview. Are you ready?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay, Collette McDonald, your wonderful coach, Julie Harris, asked me to ask you this question. Are you ready for it?
Yep.
What is your favorite swear word?
I think it's one that she taught me, actually. Fucktard.
All right. Well, with that, everyone.
It's gotten me through Julie's gotten me through my divorce with that one. Fucktard.
All right, Collette. Now we're getting a little bit crude. You said it once. That's enough.
I hope you use this. This better not be edited out.
Okay, well, I'll leave it if you want me to. So listen, everyone. I loved interviewing Collette today because she's so real. I remember very, very clearly when Julie and I got back in the business when we were in our early 20s. We listened to wonderful Howard Britton interviews. Howard was the master of interviewing top producing agents, and those interviews a lot of times were highly edited. And this conversation between Collette and I, not going to be edited. It's straight through. You listen to it. You take the information up. When you're listening to someone like Collette, you have to listen between the lines because she is giving you so much wisdom. And honest to God, guys, just pick up what she's putting down because it'll save you so much pain, anguish, questioning yourself, questioning your business. Just do what Collette does. She's made it very, very clear that everyone can succeed at the same level that she has if you choose to. Oh, and let's be clear, guys, and Collette, back me up on this. There are going to be sacrifices. You're not going to all of a sudden start making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars per year without there being some sacrifices. And you have to accept that if you want to succeed at the highest level. Are we in agreement about that, Collette?
Completely and totally.
Right, and be okay with that. And guys, you don't have to be in this massive money-making mode your entire life if you choose not to be. If you're being money conscious and setting aside and investing it, you can decide that, okay, for the next, I have coaching clients like this. For the next 5 years, I'm going to tell my friends, my family, that I'm drilling down on my business and I'm going to build this specific amount of net worth from rentals, passive income, however you're going to do it, and it's going to require an absolute intense focus. Just as if someone was deciding that they're going to be a professional athlete or they're going to get ready for the Olympics or all those types of things. When you're setting a huge goal, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of focus, and, that's okay. Because when you've gotten there, when you've accomplished that success, you sound like Collette McDonald. You sound proud of yourself, happy. You are accomplished. And that's, after all, the feeling that all of us want to have. So, Collette McDonald, I loved today's interview. You are so much fun to talk with. Thank you very, very much for being today's superstar.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Have a wonderful day.